All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Good evening. Welcome to the January 4th, 2024 meeting of the Minnetonka Planning Commission. The commission generally meets on the first and third Thursdays of the month. The schedule and tentative agendas can be obtained by calling the planning department or by checking the city website at minnetonkamn.gov. The commission holds public hearings on land use applications. From a specific process standpoint, that means we make recommendations to the city council on rezonings, subdivisions, conditional use permits, and amendments to the city's comprehensive plan, zoning ordinance, and subdivision regulations. We also make final decisions on site plans, signage requests, and variance requests, and expansion permits, unless these requests are part of an application that must be heard by the city council. In that case, the commission makes a recommendation, and the council makes the final decision. The city notifies property owners within at least 400 feet of the sites, posts signs on the properties, and places notices in the Lakeshore Weekly News and the Minnetonka Memo. Any aggrieved party may appeal a final planning commission decision to the city council. If you wish to appeal, you must submit a written request to the city within 10 days of this meeting. From a broader standpoint, the city's comprehensive plan, zoning ordinance, and subdivision regulations are the city's best efforts to codify a balance between individual rights and community responsibilities. Individual rights are easy to understand. Community responsibilities are more subtle, but the idea is that we, as members of the community, agree to limit our individual rights for the common good of the group. The planning department, the planning commission, and the city council are charged with managing this sometimes difficult balancing act. We ask you to keep this broader perspective in mind as we review tonight's applications. Again, welcome. Staff, please call roll.
Waterman. Here. Banks.
Here.
Henry.
Here.
Hanson. Here. Maxwell.
Here.
Powers.
Here.
Chair Sewell.
Here, there are 7 of us seated here tonight. Next up on the agenda is approval of the agenda, and I don't believe we had any changes.
No changes, Chair.
All right, would someone like to make a motion to approve the agenda as posted?
I'll make that motion, Chair.
Motion Maxwell,
I'll second the motion.
second Henry. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Next is approval of minutes from December 14th, 2023 meeting. Commissioners, any changes to those minutes? Doesn't look like it. Then I'll take a motion to approve the minutes from December 14th.
I'll make that motion.
Motion Waterman,
I'll second.
second Banks. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Next is report from staff.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioners, welcome to the first meeting of 2024. Hoping that we'll have as good of a year as we've had in the past. Just a few things from last year. The last council meeting of 2023 was on December 18th. We had quite a few items from the Planning Commission that carried forward to that. A couple things on the consent agenda were extensions of previously approved projects. Those included the Abdo Market House. This is the Minnetonka Apartments Minnetonka Apartments? Yeah. On Excelsior Boulevard there in Glen Lake. That received another 12-month extension. We expect that that'll still go forward. And then the second one was the Bowers Minnoco and on Excelsior and Baker Road, an extension to that building in the rear of the gas station property for the servicing part of the project. So those were extensions. We also had the Bantus Point Road. That was the floodplain and conditional use permit item that was approved by the council. And then we had the introduction of the Greco Minnetonka project, which is the site of the former Hillcrest Nursing Home. So the ordinance that will go along with the master development approvals on that project was introduced at the council. We're still, the development team is making a couple more changes to the plans before that comes back. Probably will be into February at this point before we see that one again. And then lastly, I think I'd reported at our meeting in December that the Orchard Road garage, that's the large one in the rear of the property, with the conditional use permit for the size and the height that you had recommended denial on, the council had basically rescinded their decision on that and reconsidered it. So the applicant brought back that garage without the the porch dormer on it. So same size. Ultimately, the council decided to vote that down. So that was the decision on that. And that's all from, yeah, it was the Wolde project, if you remember that one. Yep. So that was the last meeting of the council's year. We've got an upcoming meeting on the 18th of January will be our next meeting, and then we have a full schedule going forward. So that's all I've got for tonight. Looking forward to a great new year again. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I actually just have a quick question. You mentioned a couple different extensions. What's the fee associated with that, or how much does that cost in general?
So
Just out of
for,
curiosity.
for extensions, we don't have a fee associated with that.
Oh, okay.
For the first 3, that's basically the policy on extensions is we'll do
Okay.
3 of those. Yeah.
Okay, I was just curious. So thank you.
Yep.
Commissioners, anything to report? Yeah, Commissioner Powers.
I just have one thing to report, which is that this winter has been the mildest in my lifetime. It's just amazingly nice. So I took the opportunity to walk over to, what do we call it, Ridgedale Commons, our new park. So I took my little dog Scout, who's 10 months old today, by the way, and still full of puppy energy. And we go over there and walk around. And it's just a wonderful place. It was well lit for the holidays. It looks very nice. And I just think we did a wonderful thing with Ridgedale Commons. So that's all I have to report.
Great, thank you. All right, moving on to item number 7, which is consent agenda items. These are typically a little more routine in nature and will be passed with one motion. Unless someone would like to pull an item and have a full discussion and vote on it, we can do that as well. So item on the agenda tonight is item 7A, conditional use permit with locational variance for an educational use within an existing religious institution at 12007 Excelsior Boulevard. The recommendation is the council adopt the resolution approving the request. Commissioners, would anyone like to pull this item and have a full discussion on it? Doesn't look like it. Would anyone in the audience like to pull this item and have a full discussion on it? Also doesn't look like it. All right, then I think we're probably ready for a motion on this one. Would someone like to make a motion on this item?
I will make that motion.
Motion is Hanson.
I will second.
Second Powers. Staff, please poll the commission.
Waterman,
Yes.
Banks,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Henry,
Yes.
Maxwell,
Yes.
Powers,
Yes.
Chair Sewell.
Yes, motion carries. And this is a recommendation to be heard by the City Council on January 29th. So good luck with that project. Next is moving on to item 8, and we have no items on the non-consent agenda, which brings us to item 9, and I'll just kind of spitball here. Concept plan, this is the first step in a multi-step process, and I'm guessing you've got a chart that will show the process. If not, I can
Actually, Chair, I didn't include that one
Oh.
tonight, but I will talk about it.
starting the new year off a little rusty, Mr. Gordon. So anyways, this will be the first step of many potential meetings on this potential item. And with that, we'll also hear from the proposed developer, and then we'll also take public comments. If you can be concise with your comments, that would be helpful as well. But if there's a larger meeting, we can also have people come back if there's additional things. But so with that, our item is item 9, a concept plan for a residential care facility development at 12620 Minnetonka Boulevard. And again, this is just a discussion. There's no recommendation, no votes, nothing like that, just a chance to give feedback. And I don't know, it says Ms. Raines in here, but one of you two, which lucky person, Mr. Gordon.
I will take care of it tonight, Chair. Thank you. This is a concept plan, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But let's just first understand a little bit about what's being asked for this evening with the concept plan by English Rose. So this is the property on Minnetonka Boulevard. It's in the Mills commercial area. It's just down the street from Big Willow Park as well, which kind of surrounds 2 sides of the property with the creek flowing on the northern side. It's about almost 3 acres in size. It's very low in topography. There's a lot of wetland or floodplain and wetland that I'll show on a later slide. And there's an existing single-family residence on the property that's been there for many decades. This shows the slide from the applicant, just showing that in a different map form. And what the applicant is proposing here is to really change the use of the property from a single family home to 4 buildings for basically a kind of a community village for dementia care. And each of the buildings would have units in the building for that purpose. It's organized around a central driveway and kind of common area with trails for the enjoyment of guests. The trails also connect to the city's park and trail system for some off-site ability as well. I mentioned some of the features on the property, that it's low, it's up against Mayhaha Creek. The darker green areas show where the floodplain exists on the property, and this is the floodplain that was previously reviewed by the Planning Commission when we had the ordinance and that what we call the Atlas 14 update. So it's the most current floodplain model. So it represents the newest available data that we can model. So it keeps those elevations in check for future development and consideration of flood potential. So those are the darker of the 2 greens there, and then the lighter green is a little higher in elevation than those darker green areas. So that's where the buildings sit mostly. You can see a little area on building number 1 that has floodplain running through it here. The applicant was proposing to do some floodplain mitigation to allow that building to be located and sit in that position. So that is generally the overview of what's going on with the property. They provided some typical illustrations of the kind of the character that they seek for the buildings. Again, these are designed to be similar in their appearance and function, and kind of organized around a common area. So again, this is our concept plan review. Tonight we're not making recommendations to the council. We're not moving forward a proposal that grants entitlements for land use. We're simply talking about the idea in this conceptual plan review. So the topics that we've posed here, and certainly the Planning Commission can pose others, are on the screen. I'll get to those, but what we want to do is really kind of answer some of the larger questions, the policy questions that were framed in the staff report. So is the land use something we would consider, knowing that we've got a property that's zoned R1, will need to be rezoned to something different, and we'll also need a comp plan amendment to take it from a park designation to some form of residential. So those are kind of the policy questions to be commented on this evening. And then we can get into some more detailed questions about the site plan, natural resources, the design of the buildings, and other things the commission would like to discuss. So if the concept plan review is favorable for the commission, the council, and the applicant seeks to go forward after we're done, then that would be the formal review process, the development review process. On that slide that the chair had mentioned, that's not in the slide deck tonight. So we'll have a second level of review that will grant entitlements if the project is approved in whatever form that comes back. So again, we'll have a discussion with the Planning Commission and the applicant next, and then if there are public present, we will take public input this evening as well. So with that, I think I will turn it back to the chair for any anything that I missed. Otherwise, the applicant is here, and I think we can engage in a discussion.
Great, thank you. If anybody has any, I just have a quick question.
Yep.
It's not going to be deep in the details on this. Just curious why we would need a comp plan amendment. It was designated as parkland?
Yes.
Even though it's zoned R1 currently, the thought was it's going to go back to parkland.
Yeah, it's a little uncommon where
Yeah.
we have a single-family parcel that's guided differently than its use, especially a use that is kind of infers a public use, and that really has a history that goes back many decades and 3 comp plan cycles where it's been guided as park. Some of you will recall the efforts that happened along the creek corridor to the west, where the city was purchasing properties, single-family properties, much like this one along the creek. So kind of between 494 and Baker, there were homes in there, and the city purchased those and turned those to park. Well, that was the plan for this property too. The city and the owner have not been able over those many decades to come to terms for a sale, but the city's kept its interest in having it as park and guiding it as park. We recognize that if we can't, if it's not going to be park, we're going to have to give up that designation in the comp plan because we do need to still provide the owner's use of the property, and we can't essentially hold it hostage, with a park designation if we're not going to buy it or something like that.
Okay,
So
that's great.
That's the recognition.
That's exactly the context I was looking for, so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Okay, Commissioners, anything else for staff? Otherwise, you have something, Commissioner Hanson? Yeah, no, please.
Maybe I don't want to put words in your mouth. So would you say then the city is at a point where they're no longer pursuing parkland designation at all for this property? It's wiping the hands here.
It's kind of a two-pronged question where we still have interest in it for park. The current owner has basically decided to pursue other avenues for sale of the property. So, if we were able to come to terms, we would be amenable to it. If not, then we need to kind of concede the designation to allow use of the property for what it's being used for, or some other reasonable use, and not keep it as park property. Yep.
I would imagine a gap in price would be my guess of what's driving it. Okay, great. Yeah, Commissioner Powers.
Just for a point of clarification, how long has the city been thinking that this would be a good park property?
Well, Chair and Commissioner Powers, it goes back to at least the 99 comp plan where it was designated as park. And how far back into the 90s were those conversations happening, I'm not exactly sure.
We're looking about 30
but
years.
A long time, yeah, 3 decades.
And why do you think it would be good for a park?
Well, for one, I'll just put up this slide here. This has parkland on both sides of it. So you've got the Big Willow Park directly to the west or the east, and the trail systems and the facilities in it. And then you've got the Mills Landing Park to the west. So that just provides, again, kind of a bridge to both of those parks. So you could continue trail systems through it and maintain what's really a green edge along
Right.
Mayhaw Creek.
Thank you.
And that was part of a larger strategy you referenced, right?
That was a strategy. That was part of the park referendum. I'm going to forget the year in the early 90s. Yeah.
Yep. Makes sense. Thanks. All right. If the developer would like to come forward, we'd love to hear from you. If you have a presentation and like to offer comments, we'd love to hear it. If you can give us your name and address for the record, and welcome.
Thanks. My name is Joshua Wirt. I'm the owner and operator of a company called English Rose. We provide care for people who need 24/7 care usually, and we provide it in the comfort of their own home or in one of our single-family homes. So we operate care homes. Right now I operate 6 of them, 5 in Edina, 1 in Minnetonka. And we have about 15 clients where we provide care in the comfort of their own home. And I'll go through my presentation. I think I'll go through it quickly. I did this with the neighbors like 4 weeks ago, and I slowed way down, but I have a feeling we're a little more businessy, so tell me to slow down if I'm going too quick, but I'll kind of clip through it pretty quickly with your permission.
Sounds good.
Okay, how do I advance this? Do I do it?
Yep, you just use the arrows.
Cool.
There you go.
Okay, we can skip this page. You've seen it already. That's the property. You've seen that page also, so we'll skip that. The new floodplain, you know, if I would have found this property 2 years ago, I think what would have been proposed would have looked quite different, because I think it was only months ago that the new floodplain regulations were fully in place, and it does make most of this property undevelopable. And so that's why the houses are laid out where they're laid out. Okay? The homes are going to be beautiful. English Rose, all 6 of our homes are very well maintained. They're embedded in beautiful neighborhoods, and we're beloved by our neighbors in all 6 of our neighborhoods. We take care of our homes really well, and they're very nice. This is an example of the first home which we brought to market 1 year ago in Minnetonka. So this is my first Minnetonka home. Its address is at the bottom, 9804 Oak Ridge Trails. If you want to drive by and take a look, that's kind of gives you the sense of the quality of what we do. Okay. I added this next slide in just for a cute thing, which I bought the house from my mom. She built it in 1971, and this is the house I grew up in, and I just bought it from my mom 2 years ago, and now I still own it, and now it's a care home in Minnetonka. The homes are beautiful, both on the inside and on the outside, so I think that's the point I'm trying to make with all this stuff. I think going with the neighbors, though, you know, this was super important. I wanted to get that point across. I'm not sure it's as relevant to you guys, so I'm just kind of flying through these pages. When we're this is an English Rose home that we have designed in concept. We call it our perfect home. It's shaped like an L, and so when you see my homes in that concept plan, I just used this home and plopped him in there. And so, but nice architectural detail, very residential. Lots of windows. Hopefully you think they're beautiful. If you don't, I'm happy to change the style. And I'm just going to spend just a couple minutes telling you about English Rose. I'm not sure it's totally on point for our planning commission, but people don't really come to live at English Rose because of our beautiful homes. They come because of the care they get, and the care is top notch. We have a very serious vetting process by which we hire our caregivers. They're very highly trained, and that really is the difference between English Rose and everyone else that runs care homes. The other big difference is in Minnesota, the average caregiver ratio for long-term care facilities is 1 to 18. 1 caregiver for 18 residents. At English Rose, it's 1 to 3. So between hiring the best people, training them really well, and keeping our ratios really small, that's why English Rose, that's kind of the core of English Rose. It's not really the houses. I'll skip this page. This just talks about, I think, you know, the city of Minnetonka has, I think, over 100 care homes in it, in neighborhoods. So you're not unfamiliar. You get to live a very normal, residential, family-like life instead of being in a big institution. And so, as you know, we got the baby boomers aging right now. I love this. There's lots of statistics on it, but this is my favorite one. We're going to have a 70% increase in the senior population in America between 2020 and 2060. I mean, it's just an unbelievable metric. And by 2060, 25% of the American population will be seniors. So it's a big, you know, coming up with housing solutions and care solutions is a big part of, you know, they said before the pandemic hit, they said this is the biggest health crisis facing, you know, America. And then the pandemic hit, so I don't think it's the biggest health crisis anymore, but it is a pretty serious issue for communities. And there's something going on outside of America that is super inspired. And it's not just care homes. You know, there's big institutions for memory care. Then there's these care homes, which are awesome. And communities are dealing with this big bulge in the population that's going to happen right now within the senior population. And they've come up with something that is being referred to as dementia villages. These are multiple care homes, all organized in a really thoughtful way together into a neighborhood. And they're in Amsterdam, and they're in Austria, and they're in Australia and Norway, but they're not in America yet. And this is the most innovative thing going on. And my dream and my vision is to build the first dementia village in America. I'm going to need more land than I have here at this little property, because I don't think 4 houses is going to qualify as a dementia village. But I just wanted to take this last minute to just tell you, just to share my vision with you. Or if you happen to know of a big piece of land in Minnetonka that I should work on, I'll gladly give this one up and go to there. This is what I want to do. I want to do a dementia village. This is an example of a 15-home dementia village where everyone who's living in these homes has dementia, but they're living in a community that feels like the normal communities that they grew up in and that they live in. This is the most non-institutional and humane version of dementia care out there. I'm totally inspired by it, and I'm still looking for that big piece of property. So one thing that makes my property, I'm trying to fake it as a dementia village with 4 homes, but I would love to, you see that little thing that says barn? I'd love to have a common building somewhere on the property that we can use as a community, and that makes it more of a dementia village. And so I just want, I call it the barn just for aesthetics. It's not a barn, there'll be no animals there, but we could go there, we could bring residents from different homes and do bigger projects there. So I hope I find a spot somewhere in this project to do a common building and kind of look a little bit like a dementia village. Lots of reasons why I think this will be good for the community. We got the booming senior population, super innovative care solution. Again, no dementia villages, or call this a dementia, whatever smaller than a village, if we can think of a term, town. This could be the first in America like this. We've been doing this for 25 years. Okay, so it's not some Yahoo who says, "Oh, I saw the chart of the aging, and I want to get into business." And I know some people who've done this and tried to get into this business, and they're really bad operators. They're not good. We've been doing this for 25 years. We're great operators, so you're betting on a good horse. Better than 6 homes. Let me clarify that. I wish that was pulled out of there, exactly. But if it doesn't become an English Rose community, I think it'll just become single-family homes, because it's an R1, and it'll get subdivided under normal R1 rules, and there'll be single-family homes. And we take really good care of our homes, and I've been meeting with the neighbors and taking their concerns into consideration. And like, what's the exterior lighting going to be like? Like, do you have protocols and policies? And I can make those kind of promises, and I can keep the trails open and connected to the other public trails if it's one owner, as opposed to get subdivided between 3, 4, 5, or 6, or however many houses can get put on there. It's going to be as green as possible. I got resource challenges here. We got trees, we got floodplains, we have wetlands. I'm going to obviously planning to adhere to all of those, so no worries on that. I want to stay connected to the public parks. The whole idea of dementia villages is to invite the community in, and not necessarily, as opposed to locking people who have memory problems up in a building. You want to actually invite the community in. So when I was thinking about where this property is, I think the best way to do that would be to make those park connections as robust as possible. If you have any other ideas, some places have like doctor's offices on the village. Some places have educational centers. I just came up with the trails connection, but I'm open to any other ideas. The more we can invite the community in, the better. It'll be inspired and beautiful. A lot of my homes are in Edina. We have a lot of Minnetonka families who they want to live next to their mom and dad that are in facilities like this, and so proximity is important. I could go find a big piece of land in Medina, but I won't be serving my community. I was born and raised in Minnetonka, and I live in Minnetonka now, and I want to do this for the community, and also be really hard to get caregivers out there. So Minnetonka is like my dream location for this. And there'll be new jobs. New jobs, our caregivers make between $20 and $30 an hour. And we'll be, creating a bunch of new cool jobs. I think that's it. I think, I hope that was quick enough.
I think so. Great, thank you. Commissioners, do we have questions? Looks like Commissioner Powers is.
I have a
There you
couple
go.
of questions, sir. Have you visited these homes in Amsterdam, Austria, Australia, and elsewhere?
No, but my wife has told me that we will be, if this comes to fruition, we need to fly out there and go visit these communities.
Why haven't you?
Just the
If you're
cost.
so inspired by this, why haven't you gone?
Just the cost. I'm just kind of waiting till I get into the zone of doing a dementia village, like when there's something real. I think that's the time to go out there. And other places have come to Minnesota to visit English Rose. We have a international reputation, definitely a national reputation, and people who are developing things like English Rose have come to us. And if the Planning Commission and City Council, and if like, yeah, let's do this, then I will go out there and make a tour and visit all these places, and they'll welcome me, and we'll get a lot of details, like what are the specifics, like. Another reason not to go too early is I really want to learn from what their insights are. Everything looks great on paper, but until you're operational, you don't really know what the challenges are. So I want to make sure that, I want to be able to show them my plan and my layouts and ask them specifically what I need to do and take notes in order to make this as successful as possible. So I think the timing is this year, not before.
So, just to follow up on my own question and get with a comment, you're trying to persuade us that it's inspired by these villages in other
Yeah.
parts of the world, and you're
Yeah.
speaking very highly and very approvingly of them, yet you haven't seen them.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
totally true. I've just been reading a lot about them.
Okay, so
They're
there's
in
a
the New
little
York
bit,
Times.
little
I mean-
bit of a puffery on your part there. So, are you in affiliation with any medical staffing, any medical community, any medical third-party providers that work to support you or to guide you?
Well, we have a team of nurses and a doctor, but we don't have anything more than that.
In terms of developing your properties?
As far as, no, we've never, I think we're pretty good at what we do, developing these homes. And,
Well,
the Minnesota Department of Health it oversees what we do.
the only reason I'm asking that
Yeah.
is dementia, people with dementia, it's kind of a special subset
Yeah,
of humanity at this
Yeah.
point, and it's growing, like you say.
yeah,
And it requires a certain sensibility to sensory understanding. Now, I know the area of acoustics has been acoustic sensory awareness as well as visual sensory awareness. These are very specific fields in engineering. And there's many businesses that incorporate these architectural ideas into their architecture. Do you do that? Do you think about that? Do you seek counsel from engineers in those fields?
yeah. Here's my two-part question, but you might consider it more puffery. So I take a little risk in answering it this way.
Go for it.
Well, one is we kind of are the experts. in
You
that.
are the expert.
Absolutely. Other people come to us for advice. We've been doing this a very long time. This idea of taking care of people with dementia in single-family homes is almost invented in Minnesota by Jane Claremont at English Rose. I mean, this is what we do. However,
But you're building new construction here.
Yeah.
My only reason I bring that up is that this is different than the one where it was your family home. That was already built.
Yes.
This is new construction, so you have an opportunity to do something entirely different with this idea.
Agreed. And so I've been, I forget the guy's name right now, but he's also really well known locally. There's somebody that specializes in this, specifically when it comes to acoustics.
Yeah, Stephen Orfield.
Yeah, so I've been meeting with Stephen and his granddaughter and talking about if I can make this happen, contracting with them to have them partner up with us and think about, all right, exactly when it comes to lighting and it comes to acoustics, how can we take this to the next level, as opposed to just building a single
So
family.
you have met with him?
Oh, yeah, many times. But there's been no reason for us to engage yet. I told him I I have found this land and I have this vision, and so, you know, and so we're talking. But, and there's other people like Steve that we would be very interested in partnering with, just to make sure that we're doing everything. You know, the English Rose brand is truly, we have to be at the top, or we have to be ahead of just the normal things going on when it comes to caring for people with dementia. And so if I get to build new homes, and especially if they're clustered onto a campus, I'm going to go visit around the world all the best people who do this. I'm going to partner with people like Mr. Orfield and his expertise in acoustics. This is going to be, I want this to be my life's work. I mean, I just wish it was bigger. I want this village to be my life's work, and I'll do it at the highest level. Absolutely. I'm not just going to put 6 homes up that are, you know, that just qualify as Minnesota Department of Health licensable. This will be very inspired.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions? Yeah, Commissioner Banks, you have a question?
Thanks, Chair. Joshua, I caught your first name. Can you repeat your last name for me?
Wert, W-E-R-T as in Tom.
All right. And I have quite a few questions, if you can bear with me. Let's start with your vision for this property with the 4 homes.
Yeah.
What size these are you?
They're about 3,000 square feet.
Okay.
They don't have basements because we don't need basements. And it's best to have all the bedrooms on the main level. That's what makes them this kind of long shape.
Sure. And
You know what? It
How
might be
many-
3,500. I just can't remember if the garage is in there or not. Sorry.
so roughly between 3 and 4,
Yes.
we'll say safe. How many residents are you anticipating being in each home?
So flexible on that. Goal would be 9. 9.
9 in each home.
Yeah, 9 bedrooms.
And that includes, and then what about staff?
Staff don't live there. We have 3 shifts, 2 staff or more at all shifts. And so staff come to work there, but they don't live there.
Okay. Any family are invited to stay in these facilities, like spouses?
Well, we have a husband and wife who are moving in as a couple. So that can happen, but that's then 2 people. That counts as 2 of the 9 or 2 of the 6, depending on the size of the house.
So they would have 2 rooms?
Well, we have a husband and wife right now who are happily married, but they requested different houses. So they're living just a couple blocks away from each other. Every family's different. So someone may say same house, different rooms. Someone may say king-size bed, together. It really depends. And as the disease of dementia progresses, it can get really challenging to stay in the same bedroom as somebody who has dementia.
And anyone with dementia, are they able to travel, drive a car, or is that totally off limits for them as well?
That's totally, I mean, the short answer is totally off limits.
Okay. So I'm just thinking
Yep.
about parking and
Yeah, it's a
traffic.
great question. I have 5 dementia homes, memory care homes, and I have 1 assisted living home. So it's licensed under a different rule than with the Minnesota Department of Health. If you have an assisted living home, you need parking spaces for everybody. You need different bathroom setups. These will be licensed as dementia homes, so that so different door access systems, different fire codes, sprinkler systems, things like that.
Okay. So in terms of parking, garages, what do you envision?
So all my other homes have 6 bedrooms, and there's always 2 or 3 cars in the driveway. And so, and I'm happy to do a study. We can also go by, just drive by and look. And we have, so there's 2 to 3 cars, and someone may visit, and a nurse may come. There could be 5 cars per home.
Sure.
And this is now going to 9. So we're just going to uptick that by 30%. So instead of, we do a 1-to-3 ratio. So at a 6-person home, we'll have 2 caregivers. That's 2 cars. So at a 9-person home, we'll have 3 givers. That's 3 cars. And then you just, if there's an extra 2 cars, maybe now there's an extra 2.5 cars. So we definitely need to think about that in planning this property.
Okay. And so that's 4 cars per home.
Yeah, but please don't quote me.
No,
For the
please.
record, please don't quote me
No,
on that.
not quoting you, just
A
trying to
car
get
study will definitely
ballpark.
be thoughtfully done.
On your slideshow, on your slide deck, page 17,
Yeah.
yep, here. you have an asterisk by the one of 3 for English roads. What does that asterisk represent?
It looks, yeah. When I have an asterisk in one of my presentations, there's always a footnote at the bottom. Now, there's one missing. So I think I meant to remove that asterisk. My guess is, though, I can kind of remember an earlier version of this deck. Usually our ratios are closer to 1 to 2 because we have nurses who don't really count as caregivers, okay? But so we have 1 nurse for every 2 homes. So that's a half person right there. That's always in the homes. Then we have activity coordinators, physical therapists, we have occupational therapists. I mean, the amount of staff that we have in the homes is never 1 to 3. It's always 2. But I think I just want to go caregiver to caregiver. And so this is a pure caregiver to caregiver ratio, but the truth is our staffing ratios are actually, I think you would say, lower, more like 1 to 2, 1 to 2.5.
Okay. And last question.
Yeah.
The barn facility that you
Yeah.
have there in the center of the property,
Yeah.
is that for public use or just for?
I thought it could be but I just don't, I haven't come up with, and again, I think visiting these places around the world will give me ideas and insights of what else we can do, like education. We were thinking yoga, exercise designed for seniors, but then I'm thinking, but then there's the marsh, that just got bought by the city of Minnetonka. I'm not sure what I can bring to the community, but I'm wide open to these ideas. I would love it to have a really cool, interesting, use for the public.
Well, I just wonder how that would change the use of the property if there's a community building on the property versus for residential building.
Well,
But that's probably something you have to work out with the city in terms
Yeah,
of,
I would balance it. I mean, I'm pretty civic minded, I ran a nonprofit before this. I'm not, I'm doing something that benefits the community is what my career has been about. And so I'm super visionary. I'm very into any ideas that we can come up with where this could be, where the city of Minnetonka would be proud and honored to have this in their city, like Rochester has Mayo. I mean, that's what I want. If it was just a little bigger, that's what I want. I would love the city of Minnetonka to be like, we're hosting the first dementia village in America.
all right, thank you.
You got it.
Other questions? Commissioner Maxwell, did you have a question before? I was reading body language.
I did, but
Okay.
Mr. Banks took most of
Got
them.
it,
But I do have one other question about your 6 existing homes. Were any of those things that you constructed specifically for this, or were they all existing homes that were updated for this use?
They're all existing homes that were updated, which was the business model for the whole industry. But that may be coming to an end, and it's very complicated. But the Minnesota Department of Health had a major revision to their laws about what these homes have to be. And I think the era of renovating homes and turning them into dementia care homes has come to an end. That the amount of firewall protection, and they have all these new standards that will make doing the business I'm in. I think it's an unintended consequence. The upgrade of our laws, Minnesota was surprisingly behind in this area of our laws in dementia care facilities. That's poorly described, but I hope you understand what I'm saying. They finally upgraded them so that we're on par with the rest of America as far as safety and width of hallways and all these other criteria. But it might have accidentally wiped out this industry because unless you can do a new build like we can, turning your family house, turning your home, your personal home, if you decided I want to do one of these in my home, it's pretty hard now these days. So
Okay.
these will be the first newly built single family homes that will be licensed by the Minnesota Department of Health for dementia.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Waterman, you have a question.
Thanks, Chair. 2 areas of questions, Joshua. One, just the city and its observations brought up questions for the Planning Commission about safety.
Yeah.
And I was just hoping you could comment a little bit more about that, both in terms of safety for the residents, especially. I imagine where they're headed is vis-a-vis the creek, vis-a-vis pretty busy roadway.
Yeah.
And then I don't think safety is is where I'm going with this, but for the trail connection, if you could just comment a little bit more about how you designed that, any concerns with more like the public getting too close, people cutting by on bikes. I think it would be actually fairly busy.
I'm
going
okay
through
with
there.
that. So, dementia care homes are just in single residential neighborhoods. A lot of the neighbors don't, you'd be hard to even tell that they're there. Dementia residents don't spend a tremendous amount of time outside. When they go outside, they have to be 100% supervised. Thank you. So it's those simple words I can't remember. They have to be supervised very closely. And so we're in neighborhoods, we're in all of our neighborhoods, and we're out walking every day that we can and spend a lot of time outside, but we're always one-to-one supervised. And so in this situation, we're only going to have, in this little neighborhood, we're only going to have dementia homes, 4 dementia homes, instead of a normal where you'd have 1 dementia home and then a bunch of single-family families living there. So I don't think there's a desire in this model to keep a distance between the public and our residents. I think we want as much integration as possible because our residents are always supervised. We have two homes right now that back up to ponds, and our residents aren't out in the backyards, and so our residents are really inside the homes or they're supervised. So I don't see the creek being a threat to the safety of the residents at all. Did I answer your questions, kind of?
Yeah, kind of gave me a good overview. I guess the only follow-up is just, I'm going under the assumption that it sounds like there are very specific licensing requirements for dementia
yeah.
care, so that this would comply with
Oh, yeah.
whatever's in
Oh,
there.
yeah, we're audited,
Okay.
we're licensed, yeah.
Okay.
We are a part of the ecosystem overseen by the Minnesota Department of Health. So,
Second area question, just you mentioned kind of wanting to, or the intent to adhere to natural resource constraints, and I know it's sort of a chicken and egg, we're just trying to figure out, is this the right plan or not? How much have you worked with the city to understand our tree ordinances and which wetland protection rules would be in place here? The reason let me explain
Yeah.
why I'm asking is we've seen concept plans come that look interesting, and then when you really get into the details, it becomes
Yeah.
highly impractical with all the variances that would be required, where I just
yeah.
would hate for a developer to get too far down the road. So
Well,
how much have you gotten into the weeds?
Not
really
yet. So
figuratively? Okay.
now we need to hire the engineer, and I'm interviewing 3 engineers, all of whom have worked with developers in the city of Minnetonka. So they're all pitching to me that they're quite familiar with the resource requirements, and they will be the ones. Say, okay, this is my dream. What can I do? And they may come back and be like, based on all the calculations and the runoff and the tree widths, you can build 2 homes. So, who knows what's going to come back? This is just my concept. So.
Okay, thanks.
My expectations are managed.
Commissioner Henry, you'll be next, Commissioner Powers.
Thanks, Chair. Just a few follow-up questions from my fellow commissioners, too. In the presentation, if I heard you correctly, you mentioned that the proposed house that you had up on the slide, you
Yeah.
deem it the perfect house.
Yeah.
And also, I heard that in the neighborhood meetings,
Mm-hmm.
that people wanted to have diversity in the architecture. So how can you marry up the perfect house
Right.
with variety? Are you going to have one with a flat roof, one with a gabled roof, some small differences like that? Or would you materially make things different so you'd have several perfect homes?
Right. So if you look at this development right here, they're all the same houses, right? And so there's a question strategically. Do we do 4 single-family homes that don't look architecturally connected at all? Or do we do 4 homes that basically look the same? And I didn't know the right answer to that, but I think I'm falling on the side of let's do 4 totally unique homes. And so that the whole idea is that your loved one's not going to an institution. They're going to a neighborhood that feels comfortable to them, that they're familiar with. And so why would all 4 homes be the same color and the same architectural style? That starts to feel a little cultish. And so I'm leaning very much towards 4 totally unique homes, just like any neighborhood in Minnetonka would look. And then the neighbors, we were at a bonfire in their backyard, and we were chit-chatting about this, and they all preferred that much more. So that confirms that it's not going to look like this. We're going to do 4 unique homes. And perfect is more about widths and doorways and bathroom locations and where's the storage. You know, when you do a renovation, you know, your toilet paper maybe 2 floors down, and you know, you just, you know, nothing's perfect because you're trying to put this thing together. When we've done this perfect design, it's really just more the layout. We'll find 4 perfect designs. So
Thank you.
functionality is what I meant.
Yeah, and I assume that this is born off of a lot of experience that you've had with these homes that you've remodeled.
Yes.
And you know what you want to do logistically.
Yep.
Can you tell us about how long you've been in the business with these single-family homes that you've renovated versus, you say you've been in business 25 years. How many of those years have you managed these homes versus in-home care at the places?
It started with a single family home on Blake Road, right when Blake Road turns into Interlochen. It's the little white farmhouse there. That's an English Rose suite. And that was 1997. The home care only started about 10 years ago because more and more people want to stay at home as long as possible. And so they're calling us saying, I don't think my mom's ready to move in. Can you guys provide the English Rose experience at her house? And so that's how we got into that business. And now it still represents a very small portion. About 10% of our revenue is in-home care, but it's growing. More and more people want to stay at home as long as possible, which means for us, more and more people who come to English Rose Suites and lives in one of our homes are much further along in their dementia progress. We had one home 10 years ago where it was 6 residents who were all there for 7 years. 7 years. We never had turnover. People were going into our homes much earlier in the development process. Now people are staying at home much longer, and by the time they come to English Rose, oftentimes wheelchair bound, incontinent, need Hoyer lifts in and out of beds. So our business model is changing a little bit because I think the preference is to try to keep everyone at home as much as possible. But this is the core business we're in.
Thank you. You answered other people's questions about safety too. Have you worked with the city? Do you anticipate having to have a fence on the Minnetonka Boulevard side of this area?
No.
And in 25 years with home care in homes, have you had any patients that have, for a better term, gotten loose and then gotten onto a road and had any
Right.
close calls
So
with cars?
it's called elopement. That's the term. I thought that was getting married, but in this industry, elopement means someone escaped. I think in 25 years, we've had 2 elopements. And neither of them, amounted to more than the next neighbor's lot because we're so highly staffed. We don't miss people for very long. But they got, one lady crawled over a fence, in the backyard. Like, it was pretty impressive. No one knew she could do that, but she got over the fence and she made a break for it. She didn't know where she was going. She didn't know why she was doing it. But she knew she wanted to get out of that backyard. Mm-hmm. And the neighbor called, but we have to report those to the Minnesota Department of Health. That's public information. All of our violations, any of those incidents are reported to the Minnesota Department of Health.
Thank you. And then from a resources point of view, this may be premature, and this may also be a question for the city too, but I noticed that there's a lot of impervious surfaces on the floodplain, primarily the driveway and the barn too. And I'm assuming that you'll do the due diligence with your engineers, with the city, to make sure that whatever you design is going to be in accordance with all of the policies.
Yes, of course. I mean, I can't say there won't be a variance. I'm not a developer. I don't even know what that, but we're going to work within all the rules and see what we get. And if something looks super goofy, well, then we may say, well, maybe we should ask for a variance. But yeah.
Did you ever have any ideas about putting the connection from park to park on the creek side?
Yes. It was very similar to should the houses match or should they not match? Where should these trails be? And my intuition was to put them on the creek side. But all the neighbors across have said, please don't do that. Put them where you have them. Okay, we don't want to see these strangers. And so, okay. But I would go either way, you know, very open to neighbor and city, you know, feedback. Just tell me what you guys want. Because that's not critical to my core business model, which is caring for people. So,
What's your ideal number of homes in your vision of a dementia village?
I mean, if I could do 6, I would be, and I don't want to do bigger. I want to do a little dementia village, and a lot of dementia villages have like fake retail in them. If you see that article in the New York Times about dementia villages, you know, there's a cafe, and there's a movie theater, and there's a barber shop with a, you know, a red and blue twirling thing, and we think at English Rose all that's a little bit just trying to sell flashy sales. It doesn't really add value to the art life, and so the bigger you get, the more of those splashy amenities you can have. I don't want those. I want to keep it intimate. Our whole business model is hyperly intimate, and so I don't want it to get too big. 6 is my answer.
Okay. Last, this is more of a suggestion than a
Yeah.
question, but for the barn, have you thought about some way to put people to work? And people like to have tasks to do. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking if you have park to park, people that are biking, walking through, they like to drink coffee, have smoothies. and-
Love it. Love it.
Okay,
We,
put-
we do that in our neighborhoods. We also garden. You know, in Holland, Holland's Netherlands. In the Netherlands, they have dementia farms. So you have a big barn in the middle with animals, okay? And then all these houses around the outside. And they do organic farming. They do childcare. They do, I forget the other things, but it's like a working farm, okay? They take care of the animals, equestrian therapy. Obviously, they're not taking the lead, our residents, in any of these things. I mean, if I could get one out, and you know, that would be that'd be the ultimate dream, would be do something as amazing as that. But I'm not ready to go that far away. I want to do a dementia village, a little bit tighter density, and in a first, second, third ring suburb. So, but I love these ideas. So yeah, what could we do if we created this little barn? Could we offer lemonade? Could we offer, you know, coffee? Absolutely. Could we create a little cafe for people to come and actually visit with people with dementia and not be so scared of it? And that would be, first of all, that's the best idea I've heard so far, so I'm taking that idea. So if this happens, we'll be doing something like that, because that's an awesome idea.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think Commissioner Powers had a question. You'll be
Just a
next.
couple of questions, sir.
Yeah.
Do you have a working relationship with a general contractor right now
Yeah.
that you would use?
Yeah.
And who would that be?
Dovetail, they do single family homes. They don't do, so we have to decide, do we go commercial or do we go residential? We're doing residential. These are single family homes in every respect. Yes, they have smoke compartments and a lot of technology that make them licensable with the Minnesota Department of Health, but ultimately, these are single family homes. And so I've worked with Dovetail. They've become close personal friends of mine. And when we renovated this home here, you know, the learning curve was steep. I mean, we're on the phone with the Minnesota Department of Health all the time. Wait, how does this work? And what about it? What if the door swings this way? And so they're really experienced in this now. I mean, really, they've done one, but they're super motivated to do this campus or to do any other homes I do.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow that. They're really experienced. They've done one.
Yeah, I corrected myself. I
Oh.
said, to me, they're really experienced now. I wouldn't want to start over with a new general contractor. And I was like, well, they've only done one, so you can't call them that experienced. But they're my guys, and they're great, and they're inspired by the mission of the business. I mean, usually they're doing $2-3 million homes for rich people on Lake Minnetonka, and God bless them, that's great. And this is really, this business has a lot of heart in it, and you're helping people, and they're totally inspired by it. So I'm gonna stick with them. With
Okay.
Dovetail.
And then I'm just curious how you became aware that this property was available.
So I drove by. You know, I'm in my mind wanting to do a dementia village, but there's not a lot of properties left in Minnetonka. There's the 2 on Plymouth Road, 1 on each side, that I wish you know were mine. Okay, and I missed them. And I drove by and saw Roger Anderson. Yeah, Roger Anderson's home. So I just pulled over and drove down the dirt road and got to the house, and there's cars in disrepair, and tractor equipment, and the garage is leaning, and I thought, I wonder what's going on here. And suddenly I heard, "Can I help you?" And I was like, "Uh-oh." And an hour later, we were good friends, and I told him all about English Rose and my vision, and he was pretty inspired, and we shook hands right there, like an old-fashioned deal, and that was it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Hanson, you have some more questions?
I probably have a couple city planning questions, and then I have a weird
'Kay.
interaction with compassion in this
Area.
care setting. A lot of weird experiences here. So why tonight is, in your proposal, there's 4 3,500 square foot homes. Why is 4 the right number for this site when you could shrink them down and maybe do 6?
Because if I shrink them down, I got to put elevators in them. I could do 6. That's what I
You
think,
could do 6 homes, probably. Well, okay.
I could do maybe with 5 bedrooms on one level and 5 up, or 4 bedrooms on the main level and 6 up.
Okay.
And that may be the way this ends up going, based on setbacks. And Josh, you really, there isn't place to put the floodplain. Like I may have to go to an elevator model, but it's not those aren't my dream
Sure.
homes. As
It's
soon as
not
you have
your-
an elevator,
Feels a little more institutional maybe when there's an elevator.
and also the families are like, wait, my dad's gonna be up here, but the kitchen and the hangout area is
Got it.
down here. Even though it's even though it may not be totally relevant, it definitely sends a different message, and they don't feel as comfortable with their loved ones on a different level. And so my dream is to do these big, long, flat houses.
Sure. Nope, that's helpful. When I heard you say 6, I didn't think we were that far away, so that's good, experience that you're lending us there.
Yeah, I mean,
So 4 gives you
4 gives me all the bedrooms
the
on one
square
level.
footage and
Yes.
on one level. Okay.
Yes, I've already realized, I may have to go to multi-level houses. So,
Okay. When I see a staffing ratio of 1 to 2.5,
yeah,
I'm really, I have to take a step back, because that to me means this is private, elite private pay.
yeah, yep,
home.
unfortunately.
And so this is dementia doesn't know your net worth.
Right.
But when I hear, I just struggle with that, because I don't think there's a diversity in housing stock. We're just building a
There
really
isn't.
nice
There isn't.
home for somebody who needs that.
Right.
But I struggle with that as somebody who's really experienced in Title 19, that we're not serving a broad population here. We're serving people who can afford
Yeah. I struggle with
your
it too.
service.
I struggle with it too. It's not my ideal. The reason the dementia villages work outside of America is probably because of universal health care. And so that's why they haven't shown up here in America yet. You just can't make the numbers work. And so, yeah, we're all private pay. It's a bummer. I would,
It just is what it is.
yeah, I mean, but that's the way I've come to terms with it 2 ways. I really am I would have gone on to run a not-for-profit. I'm really in serving the community. And so in this way, I'm serving people in need who, they need somewhere to go. But you know how I feel good about, what makes me feel good is the caregivers. I have 100 caregivers on staff who make $20 to $25 an hour, okay, before they get into assistant management positions. It's not a lot of money, okay? It's a lot of single parents. They have second jobs. They're just getting by. A lot of kids. And we do, I could do a whole presentation about what we do for our caregivers, and to change their life and to make a meaningful impact and give them the stability and the 360 support that they deserve, because they're a little bit living on the edge for a little bit, and lots of transportation problems, lots of housing problems, and we step in, and that's kind of how I fill that need for me, is by the work we do with the caregivers, because our residents are a unique percentage of the population that don't need that kind of community support.
Yeah, and I always struggle with that too. I mean, you're hiring a custom home builder, and you are saying to me that you're employees have a tough time making ends meet.
Yep.
And I struggle with the
Yep.
dichotomy of that.
So do I.
So that makes me give pause to this as a project to say, I think I'll just lean into comments a little bit here. As a site, a dementia care site is something that is an awesome idea to me. I want to make this be the right one, and
Yeah.
with your length of time in the industry, I feel like, okay, here's a pretty good partner, but I want to ensure that Minnetonka gets a really good product, not just
I
a
know.
really, really, really elite,
I know.
high-end
I'm with you.
product. Well, I don't sense that entirely quite yet, but
Well, I don't know what else I can do.
yeah.
But I actually don't. It's
and
yeah. I don't know with my business
it's the
model what to
struggle.
do about that.
yeah,
So
yeah, it's not your macroeconomic problem.
I mean, the reason the staffing ratios in Minnesota look like that is because with public money, that is the staffing. You can't go below 1 to 18. It might be 1 to 10, but this is an average. And so,
Sure.
so that's just not the business I'm in.
Yeah.
And if I'm in that business, then you need scale, right? And then you need a building, that has as many people as possible in it because your margins are so, and so it's just not the business I'm in.
Yeah, and I hear that, and so that's probably the education we need as we go along this journey from concept plan to proposal to say, why is this project a really good fit when it's serving a select few versus a more utilitarian approach? So I hear that, and I'm not
Yeah.
trying to push back at you. I'm trying to pressure test this a little bit.
Yeah, no, I
So-
appreciate you. I think you're right on point. And if there was a way to give back to the community and use our expertise,
Yeah.
I'm all about it.
Does each of the 4 structures have, I'm assuming, its own kitchen?
Oh yeah, these are single
What
family
about like
homes.
personal care? Where does like haircuts, stuff like that?
Oh, that's all brought in.
Okay.
The homes are really just this.
They are a home.
R1, yeah, R1 subdivision. I mean, these they could be converted back to, take a big master primary suite, take a wing of it and just turn it back, and then the other ones are for kids' bedrooms. These are just total single-family homes, and then you go get the license to do a care home through the Minnesota Department of Health.
Sure. Makes sense. Okay.
That answer your questions?
Yeah, I just have comments.
Okay. Can you hold them for just
Yeah.
a little bit? Perfect. Any other questions for the developer? All right. I think
Okay,
you've
thank
answered.
you.
Thank you for being
Yep.
patient and
Thanks,
answering
everyone.
all our
You
questions.
got it.
We
Thank
may
you
have
so
more
much.
for you. All right. We will open the public hearing. If anyone would like to come forward and offer any comments on this item, feel free. All right. Looks like we lost a couple people. So we'll close the public hearing. And commissioners, we've got Commissioner Hanson, you ready to go? You were
Yeah, I can
had the
lead up.
comments on the top of your
Got
mind. so
momentum. So
keep
before
going.
I forget and
Yeah, don't
require
forget.
some elite care, I think that compassion is something as a planning commission we don't get to do very often. So I think, moving from a park, I'm going to put my boring planning commissioner hat on. Sorry, Lauren. Moving from a designated park to a place that provides a true quality of care that people are deserving no matter their income level. I think that's a good thing for us. It's probably my personal problem that it's not serving people who I think deserve this same level of care. So maybe throw it into the ether as a public policy. I wonder if there's affordable housing that happens in dementia care from a state policy perspective in the future, or we find a way to work with developers like this to say we want 1 unit in your facility to be designated affordable housing, essentially. I don't know the rules or the laws around that, but I struggle personally with probably the income, and that's not planning commission, but that's just where I sit. I feel what we've seen tonight is heading in a nice direction. I think there's a lot of refinement that we haven't seen. So I'll be curious to come forward and see if we see elevators, see a second story. That doesn't bother me as much. I trust the business side of this to know what will work or what won't work. And I think then about the site, I think I would like to see clearer definitions around parking. I think about a staff level. If you're going to have 36 bedrooms or whatever there ends up being here, and you're staffed at 1 to 2, you need 18 employee parking spots all the time, and then you're going to have crossover, and you're going to have Amazon and food service, and so you probably need 40 parking spaces, realistically in my head. And I didn't see that tonight. And you'll work with the staff and get there. But I think you're going to have a little more traffic than maybe what that particular mock-up can handle right now. What do I know? So I guess from a design, I agree. I think I'd like to see 4 homes that are of the same, general feel, but they do have different characteristics. That to me feels more like the neighborhood I live in, where none of all the houses look like a 1950s ranch, but they're all a little quirky and have some sort of lean-to on it. And then I think what I would also like to see, I'm sure the developer can get here too, but if the trails are connected, which feels like, a little bit of an olive branch in some weird way, I probably would want to see some signage to say, like from a public standpoint, educated, like, we want you to come here, but we want you to come here with respect. And I think citizens of Minnetonka would do that, frankly, too. So kind of where it's fine. I'm not all in yet, but it feels like an appropriate use of the site. So.
Great. Thank you for sharing. Commissioners, other comments? Commissioner Henry, what do you think?
Well, first of all, thank you, Josh, for the thoughtful presentation and the and the work that you're doing with the community. It's in terms of use and in terms of utility for the community. I think it's a really high use of what we can have that land be used for. And I'm a huge proponent of parkland. And my first thought when I read this was it needs to be a park, because you've got park on the one side, park on the other side, and I really want to see that connected. I'll leave that up to the city, up to the landowner, and to make sure that they did all their diligence, and the city always does, to make sure that all avenues have been exhausted. And I still think that it would be better as a park. That being said, if it comes down to it and the city and the landowner can't come to an agreement and it's developed in a different way, then I couldn't think of a better way to develop it than to have an assisted living facility, specifically memory care, because there's so much potential for interactivity with the community. And I think that's what, I don't say that I'm going to say it would be change it to a PUD because of a public benefit, but I can see there's a public benefit in having a memory care facility on both sides of a park, because there's potential for educating a lot of the people that live in the city about how it operates. And that's why I had the idea of having some way for people who are living there to feel worth and to have a job, and also to provide a public good, because people like coffee and smoothies. So I thought, why not do something like that? And I can mix comments with suggestions as well. I also think that you could do some kind of maybe once a week, bring in pets that need adoption. And then you could have because who doesn't love dogs and cats and everything else too? It would be good for the patients, it would be good for the community. So think about that, put that in your packet. But aside from best use of the property, I think it's second best use in terms of site planning. Again, I trust that the city is going to do their diligence to make sure that everything is where it is planned to be. If I could ask the city questions, and I think it's premature to do that, I would ask some questions. For example, how much fill are the bases going to need for all these houses? I've driven by it before. I haven't walked the property, but I know it's really low. So that's a concern that I have. Lighting for the bike path. It's going to be on the roadside, so I think there needs to be lighting because people are going to ride it in the night. and it shouldn't interfere with people that are living on the north side of the creek. I'm wondering about wetland setbacks and floodplain setbacks, and I'm looking at all the impervious surface on the floodplain with the driveway, with the barn. I have concerns about that, but I also know that it would be the time for it, which now it's not, but if these were designated R1, which it is now, without having any variances, how many homes could fit on this property? And that's a key question I think that you're going to have to ask the city. You're going to work with that. So I look forward to hearing that in the next proposal if it comes to that, and I hope it does. In terms of building design, I really like your idea, Joshua, about making each one unique, because that is more like a neighborhood. And people like to have their own special house. You wouldn't go to one place to say, well, I live in Unit 3 versus I live in the modern home versus the farmhouse. So personally, I'm a huge fan of modern, mid-century modern. I like what you did with the Minnetonka home. So I'd encourage you to have a flat roof, a gabled roof, somehow to distinguish the houses from each other. I think it's going to be good for the community. It's going to be good for the people that are living there. Let's see, massing. It's pretty massive the way it is, and it feels to me like you've stuffed as many houses as you could on the land that could be developed. Is that the right thing to do? Normal developments, I would say no. With memory care, I don't know, the jury's still out. I could see the benefits of having as many people there. I do like the idea of dementia villages, memory care villages, so to start at 4, it's not a bad thing. Generally then, you heard my opinions. I wish it would be a park. I hope it's going to be a park. But if it can't be a park, then I think this is going to be a really good use of the property.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Powers, love to hear from you.
Well, thank you. In 2060, I don't plan on being around, but I guess a huge part of the population will be older. You know, I don't know how we go from R1 to a business, to light commercial, light industrial, or whatever you want to call it. If I go out and I bought up 4 homes on Rainbow Drive, let's use Rainbow Drive as an example. I bought up 4 homes on Rainbow Drive, and then I came to the city and said, you know, I'd like to put in a dance studio here. You know, because young people need to learn how to dance or skate, or, you know, color, crayons, whatever. Children need to be educated, you know. Adults with dementia need to be cared for. It's all in the equation. It's all in the social equation. Would the city let me turn it into a private pay business model on those 3 or 4 lots right in the middle of a residential area where it's already zoned R1, and I want to change the zoning to private pay? So I struggle with this enormously, whether this is a park or not a park. This piece of property is R1. Forgetting what the comprehensive plan asks it to become, it's struggling to get that. I'm struggling with how do you go from R1 to 2, 3, or 4 private pay locations for dementia care. That's my big struggle on this. Regarding your idea, Mr. Wirt, I'd like you to, having what I've just said, you know, you just take it into consideration. I'm only one person, and I won't even be here to vote on it when you bring it forward. I would say develop your presentation more thoroughly and more honestly, and you'll go further with it. You've got everything that you need, except you need to, so like you say, 1 to 18 versus 1 to 2, but then in a kind of an offhanded remark, you say, well, it could be 1 to 10. It could be, that's an average. So your slide doesn't say it's an average of 1 to 18, or maybe it does. Maybe it does. Well, highlight it. In other words, you know, bring a little bit more honesty to your presentation, I think, a little less salesmanship. I think you'll go a lot farther with the city. I don't think you've never done this before, going to a development of a property with new construction. So there's a lot to be learned. I would suggest that you speak with Mr. Orfield at length. He's quite bright, very good guy. I know him. I've known him for very many since high school. And you won't do better than talking with him. So keep developing the idea. And I think it's interesting how I like the fact that you decided just to drive up to the front door and knock on the guy's front door and say, can I talk to you? That's very smart. That's what you have to do. You can't wait for the sign to go in the lawn. The other thing is that if you did want to do Dementia Village, if there's such a thing, let's show a real picture of one from somewhere else. I saw a concept of one. There's a picture of a concept of a Dementia Village, proposed for 15 in New York, I believe it is. It'd be nice to see some pictures of actual ones that are up and running. And I can't tell you how to spend your money, but I would certainly go visit somewhere soon. And so you know exactly what you're talking about firsthand and not anecdotally. So that's what I would encourage you to do. So keep it going. And I now know where English Rose comes from because I drive down Interlaken to Blake, and I've seen that name so many times, and I've always wondered, what is that? And so now I know. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to clarify, when Commissioner Powers says he won't be here, his term is up at the end of the month. I hope the project doesn't take that long. Doesn't take to 2060. Thank you, Commissioner Powers. Other comments? Commissioner Banks?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, Mr. Ward, thank you for the presentation. Really insightful. I think sentiment is pretty much the same, at least amongst what we've heard so far. I'm sure amongst all of us. Conceptually, I think it sounds great. It looks great on paper, in presentation. I think what you're trying to accomplish is noble. I do agree with Commissioner about just the affordability aspect of it, and if somehow you can work with the city to see if there's any options, or see if the state has any funding, grants, or anything where at least you can provide this same great service to a couple other people outside of your current scope. Conceptually, yeah, looks great. I think in terms of this particular location, I do see some challenges. I'll start with the site plan. So in terms of being off of Minnetonka Boulevard, if we say 4 residences and there's average of husband, wife, and 2 kids and a dog, this fits perfectly, right? But we're talking 36 individuals and a lot of staff and deliveries and things coming in and out of this particular area. So when I think of this site and I think of all of the potential traffic, the parking that you would need coming in and off of Minnetonka, which most residents wouldn't want to see this in their residence off of a cul-de-sac, but at the same time, it feels like this would be the place for it. But because of the volume of traffic that you're going to have going in and out, I'm just concerned about traffic being blocked on Minnetonka. There's even now on Minnetonka, right there, very close to this facility or where you're looking, there's a speed sign, and it's there for a reason. So that's one concern that I would have, and to see how that would you're going to need the parking, you're going to have the traffic just because of your model, and I don't think there's much you can work with the city to alleviate that. I think perhaps as you get into the details and you can really figure out what parking looks like, I would say if you think you need parking for 15 cars, double that, just because of the nature of your business, and it is a business. And as someone mentioned, you will have deliveries, and there'll just be a lot going on, right? And people coming, and they're not staying long. Families coming to visit maybe for an hour. someone coming to give a haircut, so it's going to be a lot of traffic flow, and so I would be concerned about that in that particular area where there's no traffic light unless the city would be willing to put one in or something of that nature. Also, in terms of the site, we're and I'm not I don't know anyone with dementia. This the condition. You know about it, hear about it, read about it a lot, but I don't know firsthand. But when I think of 36 potential residents, right, in this location, the public access that you're providing between one park to the other, you might have ways of keeping the residents in. It sounds like they're not able to go out unless they're supervised. And I'm just concerned if you have a way of keeping people out, to keep them safe while they're in their homes. And, without fences, and I'm glad you don't have fences in your concept, but without that, I struggle with how they're safe and not able to get out. And if they are able to get out, there's a busy road, there's a creek on the back, there's a park where they might go get lost. And then also, if you have, people able to use the facility like the barn, or people who are passing through because of the trails, how are you going to make sure that the residents are safe as well? So from a site plan perspective, those are the two things that I would want to see as you put more meat into this. Building design, I think some of the pictures you've shown and the home that you renovated in Minnetonka is great. I think I would prefer, I saw the building with the L shape, the white building with the L shape, and I understand that's just for placing in your design, but I would hope that it's not going to be that. Right, it looks more like the ones that you've renovated and some of the other homes you showed. But again, I think we all can agree if each home slightly looks different, that would be ideal. Let's see, and then also in terms of the natural resources, I think I would have liked to have seen you do a little bit more work with the city before this concept. We see the overlay on the floodplain, but I've heard you mention, it might be 4 single-level homes. You might have to go to 6 two-story homes. It sounds like there's a lot of flux in there that will be based off of the research you do and the information you get from the city. And I think I would have rather you've done more of that so we can see and understand more of what this really will be in the future. But with that, I think you have your work set out for you in terms of floodplains and setbacks and things of that nature. And ideally, like you, I would hope that it could remain 4 single level when you do bring this before us. But again, that'll depend on how well you work with the city on that. So, okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Other comments? Yeah, Commissioner Henry, you have another comment?
Well, I do. One question and one comment. Thanks for letting me jump back in too. One question for the city. In its current form, could the current R1 zoning be kept?
Chair, Commissioner Henry, there might be a possibility for that. There's certainly enough lot area to do that. The question is the buildable footprint for each of the home sites. Does it meet 3,500 square feet? We haven't done any analysis on that to know if that's could be kept with what's proposed. Certainly that first building where the floodplain mitigation was going to happen, that looked like that would be an issue on that, but could it be reconfigured? Don't know.
Thanks. That was just to piggyback on what Commissioner Powers, some of his concerns too. So if it is R1, it sounds like conceptually you could potentially still have this function of memory care and keep R1. Okay, thanks. And then one other suggestion for the developer. I'm more of a glass half full, and another fun idea. I don't know the practicality of it either, but I do like the idea of bringing the public in to show people what a memory care facility looks like. And one way to do that could be to make the houses carbon neutral, super insulated. Look up, if you haven't seen it before, about architecturally, there's a passive house where it doesn't even need a furnace. So it's so well insulated, and a lot of people don't know about that. So it could be a good way to bring people in, show them about energy efficiency, and talk about memory care facilities at the same time. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Any other comments, Commissioner Waterman?
Thanks. Piggybacking on a lot of what the other commissioners have said, I mean, I think this is a good idea, and I see the value, and not everything with dementia care being institutional or a single-family home, and certainly inspired by what you've done. I remember reading that article in the Star Tribune months ago, and I'm like, well, oh yeah, that's a great thing. How cool! So it's fun to see you here tonight presenting it in Minnetonka. No particular order. I mean, regarding the design, I don't have a strong opinion on the uniformity of the homes. I've kind of appreciate the neighborhood input. Sure, it's different styles. I do like the idea of single level, but that's not necessarily essential. Getting into land use, I think that a dementia care facility like this, and care facilities generally, may be easier when we're talking about putting them in Minnetonka, maybe easier than at a site like this, where you can get some scale, rather than when we've seen these come through in neighborhoods where there's just there are neighbors that are directly impacted. This is a little bit unique in that you have a single R1 lot, and it's really just surrounded by parkland. So that has some legs. I think it's an interesting option to have the trail cut through. I think that provides a certain amount of public benefit, because, I mean, in my view, let me talk about zoning, then I'll get back to the trail. I do struggle with rezoning generally, especially when it's not surrounded by similar uses. So if on either side you have parkland, and then we're talking about doing something with this specific lot other than parkland, I struggle with that. And in addition, with the comp plan kind of indicating that the preference, this would be parkland. So, I put a lot of weight on the comp plan, of course, with an eye towards there's a property owner, and that property owner should be able to do something with that property. And I almost kind of agree with what Commissioner Henry said, where, I think, in my view, the best use of the site would be a park, but this has some potential to be the second best use. Bringing it back to that trail concept, I think that if it's not going to be a R1 single family home, a single one on there, and we're talking about some sort of subdivision, I really think that there has to be some sort of trail cut through. Now, whether this is the right trail, I would prefer to see it moved a little bit further away. I do, if we're talking about these as single family homes. I think kind of what Commissioner Banks was talking about in terms of safety for the residents, like if you're going to have people kind of cutting through with some frequency, and I think that the trail system does get used, maybe bringing it a little bit further away or further protecting those homes is a good idea. So overall, I think it's very interesting. On the flip side, I think environmentally and with regard to our ordinances, I think this is going to be a really challenging project to develop with the intensity that is envisioned with the 4 buildings, additional impervious surface, the parking considerations, the trees. So that's not a no, it's just sort of when, for me, I've really struggled when a project comes forward asking for a lot of variances. Usually I'm not in favor of those. But like I said, it could be something to consider if there's something to move forward with. I think this is going to be a real challenge when you really see the details and look at all those real considerations on the site. Understood there's not a lot of developable land in Minnetonka, and it sounds like you really want a larger property. Wish I had one to show you tonight, but I think got to keep that in mind. That like great concept, this might not be the right site, but definitely not a no from my perspective.
Great, thank you. Any other comments, commissioners? Commissioner Maxwell, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I agree. I like the way you said it, Commissioner Henry, that this would be the second best use for this land, that parkland makes a lot of sense. And so I'd like to hear more if this comes forward as a formal proposal from the staff around what's the history of that interaction with why do we think that that's not an option in order to make that recommendation, whether or not a comp plan amendment would be appropriate. As far as this, an R1 use, I think makes sense. It's already an R1 to have residents there. I can't argue with that, but in terms of the density, right now there's one house there, and this is a significant increase in density, and I'm thinking particularly about the increase in impervious surface in this wetland area and so close to the creek. We've already talked a little bit about parking, and that the parking demand here may need to be higher than what you've mocked up here, and that would be even more impervious surface, so that would be something that you have to consider carefully, what is happening with all the runoff from that impervious surface. And I think the watershed district, Minnehaha Creek Watershed District, will be helpful in establishing that, and you certainly have to follow their regulations, but working with them earlier rather than later would be helpful. The rest of the items, I think for the trail connection is a unique public impact here. I like what you mentioned about this potentially being a single owner, so you can get that continuity across this entire site, rather than if it were to be an R1 subdivision having different owners for each property, then that'd be less continuous, more disjointed through there. I kind of like the idea of having the walk or through paths being on the creek side. I know you said the neighbors disagree with that. The reason I think on the north side makes sense is because we've talked about traffic. You've got a loop, the way it is right now, a loop coming through, and if you're gonna have people driving back and forth, I'm picturing my kids on their bikes whipping down there, and it just seems like it'd be a safer for the public on the other side. I'm not particularly concerned about the safety of the residents having people walking by on the paths. I see it similarly, people walking by the street in front of my house in my neighborhood, or walking on the sidewalk in any neighborhood, and your doors can be locked, and I don't see that really as a concern from my perspective. And then we've also talked about what would an R1 look like here? How many houses could we get? Potentially rezoning to a PUD. I think the trail connection could be a potential public good there, but I think it would be worth exploring whether, I think it'd be probably at the city council level or potentially at the EDAC level, whether there's any way we could have affordability as the public good tied to approval here, which, in a PUD, we would do that if it's a multifamily housing. We can do that. And so can we call this multifamily housing or not? So I think that's something that maybe is not in our purview, but something that City Council or EDAC could explore.
Great, thank you. Any other final comments from commissioners? Otherwise, I will go and wrap us up. So I'm a little bit more bullish on this proposal. I like it. I like the kind of theme of it's definitely the second best use of this property. In fact, I think R1 is the wrong zoning. If you look at everything around it, it makes no sense that there's a house. So that's why it's kind of like an island already. So I think this is a great way to tie in more of the community. I think the devil will be in the details. So I agree that there's going to be challenges. So brace yourself for the first meeting you have with the engineer. I think, but at the same time, if there is a variance or two required, don't be scared to have the conversation with city staff, because we approve variances all the time as long as they're reasonable. But I agree with Commissioner Waterman. If it's, you know, a list this long of all these variances needed, then it's probably not going to work. But at the same time, if it's reasonable, if we're not too far off, don't be afraid to request that. Going back to kind of some of the devils in the details, and I know this is just a concept, but I would want you to work closely with staff to think pragmatically about the traffic flow, both of cars and also of pedestrians and bicyclists. If we're going to have the trail come through there, what's the best place for it? How does it interact with cars coming and going? I know in the past, the county, this is a county road if I'm not mistaken, the county is not like multiple curb cuts for one property, so you may have to do some sort of loop or cul-de-sac of some type. I don't know what that would look like, but I have a feeling that will probably be kind of table stakes in order to make this work. I do think parking is going to be a bigger issue than we think, so we'll want to be thoughtful with that. Do we have the staff in the garages, and then you have other parking available, or however we need to manage that? But that will be definitely a thing. Also, I love the idea of the concept of the barn or some sort of central, whether it's maybe a gazebo or something else, where you can have interactions with the public, but just be thoughtful with that, because I wouldn't hate, but it would be challenging if it was such a wonderful draw that you have people driving in and trying to park in there to attend whatever smoothie or movie or whatever public good, well-intentioned, may cause more headache than it's worth. So just want to be thoughtful with how that interacts with the public, but that's detail number 632 you'll have to work through. The other thing is just, as I think about the other alternatives to what could go there, I definitely think this is far and away much better. I just hope that the practicalities of it and some of the variances aren't too numerous and grave that it can't happen. So I hope it comes through, and I like the concept. So everything else is just taste and details and can get worked out. But partner really well with the staff. They're great. They'll help guide you in the right direction. So any other final comments from commissioners? Doesn't look like it. So good luck with this. You've got a lot of work ahead of you potentially, but hopefully it's worthwhile. So we will move on to item number 10. Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Motion Waterman.
I'll second.
Second Banks. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We are adjourned. Good night.